Tier 3 brought a ton of new gear, and so here I want to present my invocator build update. This will give you a bit of an upgrade path as well as you start out with all the free stuff from the Path of Ascension, these selection chests. This document will have everything you need to know, including the skills, masteries, specializations, and all these gear setups starting from step 1 to step 4 at endgame. However, you can also access my quest log, and this will have each of the steps where you can view the entire gear setups too. And I do want to highlight some comparisons, along with the availability to switch to some more survivability if you're running into like nightmare or high level trials. So I will quickly start by highlighting the basics on how to play Invocator. I have kind of switched off it just at the beginning of tier 3 to focus more on the orb hype, and I need to put some more testing into staff orb, but all of that has just been really overwhelmed by the sheer effectiveness that crossbow orb has right now. So a lot of us are just playing that and waiting for a nerf before checking out other things. But Invocator does remain as a really solid class with a ton of damage output and a ton of survivability. A full team of invocators can absolutely get through any content. And this is the setup I would generally recommend. Getting some extra mana regen with Inner Peace here. And if you're not using self heals, switch off Full of Corruption and use either Mana Amp for more health or this one for heavy attack when you stand still. But I usually go with Full of Corruption, and then in the Wand Masteries, you don't use Vampiric Onslaught, so you have Malicious Focus, meaning you gain all those heals through Vampiric Contract. And that allows you to simply gain a ton of self-sustain. All of that healing whenever you deal damage. It's absolutely crazy. And you can target an ally and you can put all those heals on them. So you're really good as like a secondary support in content, or if it's easier content, you might not even have a dedicated healer. And so you can fulfill that role. Just quickly jumping to the specializations. In focused firebombs, I generally recommend this one where you charge up, it will deal the most amount of damage. I just like the mobility, so I have that there. And then Inferno Wave. This is not necessary, but I use the cooldown decrease and sometimes the consecutive use too. And I would use that instead of Inner Peace in fights where I'm not going to have any mana issues. Chaining Bolt is pretty good damage on low cooldown, and you get Chaining Bolt for even more damage. Fireball Barrage, great damage output, just make sure you have burning stacks on the target to get the extra hits, and you want to get the cooldown decrease. High Focus here just for the base damage boost. You do have the option to get targets expanded for more team support. Judgment Lightning simply for its damage hits, and then Hellfire Rain, this is your main burst damage ability. Ideally you want your target to be having a nice fat hitbox so that you can get all of those meteors on them. When you're targeting just a dummy here, it's going to do measly amounts of damage. When you target a boss, it's going to do like 300, 400, up to 800,000 damage. Sometimes if you have the Delos Nova staff skills core, you can hit upwards of 1 million on that. But on dummies, it's terrible, and it does make testing staff here pretty hard on dummies because your damage output's not properly represented, because this just won't hit the dummy much. As for wand specializations, you want to have this on Touch of Despair just for damage over time, and will also boost your basic attacks. Curse Explosion, you generally want it on Dark Explosion to not consume those damage over times, get the damage boost, and so that it's single target. Then we have Decaying Touch here, simply to apply that damage over time again. If you do have enough time for basic attacks, you can just rely on the mastery here, which will already apply Decaying Touch, and thus you could potentially use a different skill or Magic Circle. Enchanting Time here, simply for the skill damage boost. Valorous Barrier for the base damage boost. You do have the option to switch off that to use Blessed Barrier, which is a huge defense boost, giving you a ton of survivability. And yeah, that's about it for the skills and everything I would use. Again, we do need to look at masteries, and I recommend checking the section in my document for them. So single target masteries would be just here for maximum damage output, where you are using right here the vampiric onslaught to turn vampiric contract into just dealing more damage, but you lose all that self-healing and thus that safety net, needing to rely on your healer more. You can switch to then the healing mastery setup, which is just this right here, again not using that vampiric onslaught and using malicious focus instead for the magical damage boost, so then you can have this passive here. If it is nighttime, you can technically not use Light of Devotion and take advantage of Eye of Emptiness and still gain the full damage over time boost plus cooldowns, but that would just be in content like the Nightmare Raid. Staff masteries, mine are very low right now as I just switched them over to Orb, but you can see what I would recommend here, and in particular Mana Shield is where you're getting quite a significant defense boost. Combine that with Mana Spring when you're below 30% mana, you get another mana boost, or you could take Power Surge for an extra max damage boost. Now keep in mind you can use different skills for multi-target, as this is primarily for single target. This is explained in the document with using this skill setup, what your rotation would be, and your specializations. You also want to change a bit of your masteries, particularly on staff, so you're getting all those multi-target effects. But if we quickly jump back to your rotation here on staff for boss fights, you're mainly just using your buff abilities here. So Enchanting Time, High Focus, Valorous Barrier, and then as described right here, you're going to want to put Touch of Despair on your target to add that damage over time, activating Vampiric Contract, and then you can use your Hellfire Rain, Touch of Despair again, Focused Firebombs, Decaying Touch, Touch of Despair, Curse Explosion, and then Chain Lightning, Fireball Barrage, and Judgment Lightning are just filler damage. You use them enough cooldown. In the end, you can pretty much result in just spamming the abilities when they come off cooldown. However, try and prioritize always applying these curses before you use Curse Explosion again, and also try have cast a fire ability, whether that's the Focus Firebombs or your Hellfire Rain, before you're also going to use that curse combo. And that's really about it. Just be aware there is a cooldown speed cap of 120%. So if I'm at 102%, I can still only get to 120% when I have this high focus, despite it saying it give me 58%. So there is a line where you can just end up with too much cooldown and then not really gain much benefit from this, but high focus also does give you this max damage boost, which is useful. And if you have too low base cooldown, then you also will just have a lower uptime on high focus, because you can't exactly get full uptime on that. Even if you have 100% buff duration, that's still only a 24-second duration, so there is still some downtime with it. But try and cast it before you use your other big abilities so that their cooldowns actually reduced. If you cast it after you have cast an ability, that cooldown does not get reduced. But now let's jump to tier 3 gear and what I would recommend here. So we can quickly look on questlog. This would be step 1, simply what you will take from Path of Ascension. I don't recommend putting trait resonance on these. You will want to work towards step 2 pretty quickly. You should be able to get to the point where you can do the dimensional trial queue. You only need 6,100 combat power. You will have to maybe farm some extra runes, farm some masteries, and just ultimately finish Path of Ascension. This will give you a ton of runes and quite a bit of mastery, and then you can start getting these valuable drops, which you can get through the trial here as well. And from those, you want to get this Hellfire Cloak, you want to get the Volcanic Glass Bracelet, the Teardrops of Fortunate Omens, and the Belt of Twisting Fate. Again, super accessible ones, although these earrings are actually from the Abyss dungeon, but nonetheless, all of them are craftable with these adventure coins, the Fortitude ones. And then for your wand, you can craft up the Lucian's Code of Heretic, or get it as a lucky drop. And it gives an absolute ton of stats and is what I would recommend. I would also suggest getting the Foci Staff. You do not have to buy it from the auction house these days. Simply do your contracts, getting the contract coins, and you can visit the contract coin merchant and purchase this pack right here, which now drops the Foci Staff. It's a selection chest. So that's what I would do on step 2. You can also get some armor upgrades, getting the Spectral headpiece and boots, or you can mix and match. Ultimately, the main boost is this critical damage effect, and then you can get 2-piece Brute Slayer for the attack speed and cooldown. This Brute Slayer armor is very easy to get. You can craft it right here or get it to drop in a dungeon, but just keep in mind of the prices of these things. Look at the lithographs of those spectral armor pieces and compare it versus the cost of just getting the Blood Hunter set. This may just get cheaper and cheaper over time, and it may end up just be better straight up purchasing the full Blood Hunter set. This is ultimately the set you want to go for, as you can see here, at your end game build, because it gives the most critical damage, the most attributes, and even the critical hit chance. I have looked at getting like 2 Sacred versus 2 of the new Brutal Slayer pieces, and it ends up just not worth it. It's like barely any difference, 0.3%, and that's not accounting for the cooldown boost from Brute Slayer. So I wouldn't recommend this. You want to upgrade tier 3 gear anyway, so if you had to go for the budget option right now, it would be 2-piece Spectral and 2-piece Brute Slayer. And that would be it for, step 2 here. And step 3 is simply getting the legendary pieces here. So on step 2, don't replace the arms that you got through Passive Ascension, and don't replace the Sinking Sun ring. When you get to legendary gear, you will get that legendary ring, the legendary arms, and the legendary staff. You will complete the raid, you will get lucky drops, or ultimately you will save up enough entropy shards, and you will purchase them from the merchant right here, up in the top of Herba Village. However, once you have that gear, you may want to go to stat conversion and swap those stats to better ones. I personally have the legendary wand, but it's best in this setup to have the legendary staff. You can read my explanations here in the document where I discuss that here, along with the different wand weapons. Yes, the best one would be Tevent, but it is very expensive and you want to get it upgraded. If you don't have it upgraded, then Lucian's kind of ends up at basically the same, just by the sheer amount of stats it has, not because of the skill bonus. Tevent's has the ability, when upgraded, to decrease the target's defense, which boosts you and all your team's damage by about 3%. So in terms of the stats that you want on legendary gear, I would go with like dexterity, perception, maybe strength here if you were hitting the 99 cap, arms, perception, fortitude, heavy attack, and the ring just strength, wisdom, perception. When you are sorting through these attributes, your priority is wisdom to 99, dexterity to 99, and perception. Now don't be spending more than 20 points in an attribute, because then it just ends up wasting it. But yeah, if you're at step 3, your build's already really solid, and the only real thing left is to upgrade your necklace and your ring. And I would recommend holding out for the Necklace of Morning Mist and the Band of Brutal Agony. This band is actually from field bosses, so it's not the worst to obtain, and has been dropping in price quite significantly. So you can just wait it to drop further. This Necklace of Morning Mist is only going to come, I believe, from Nebula, so you'll just have to get it as a lucky drop. And just don't rush too much. It's not the end of the world if you don't get it. And if you don't hope to drop it, you could consider getting something like the Deep Dragonic Gorgot instead, or the enchanted one. As per the document, I will mention skill cores, so you have that legendary staff. You may be wondering, what effect to actually put on it? What passive? Well, the options are pretty expensive for the good ones. It's going to be the Aridus staff or the Delos Noah staff. The ultimate budget one would be the Grey Eye staff effect, but that ends up not even much point in doing that. It's barely an increase. You can see how much this Aridus staff costs, so not exactly something I would rush to get. Same for the Delos Noah staff here, but there just isn't anything really better than that. The rest I explain here in the document, like armor, accessories, your traits in the priority, along with resonance traits, and your runes. Just be aware, runes is a place where you can switch a bunch of them over to like maximum hit points, skill damage resistance for some added survivability. But yeah, I would just recommend these synergies, and you will eventually want to be getting at Chaos Runes. In step 1, I assume you don't have Chaos Runes yet, same for step 2, and so I just have those selected. But step 3, you can slowly work on those Chaos Runes, getting all that boss magic heavy attack. As for artifacts, it's the same as usual. 4 PS Chaos Harbinger for that critical damage is the most important thing. But if you really need some extra survivability, you can always switch over to the full Ancestral set, giving up that critical damage. Can be worth it if the other option is just dying. And there are some last notes here on consumables. You want Stellarite, you want species damage food, and you can get these other buffs like Scorpion Tail Fritters, Mushroom Stir Fry, Vegetable Stir Fry, Clam and Seafood Soup, and Mana Regen Potion. Guardian, I would usually go with the Lady Knight, mainly for the oh shit moments for the shield, and especially when you use the Solar Stone, where you want to be under 40% of your max health, and that shield will stop you from just getting one shot. And in terms of overall mastery skills, there's really nothing new I would add. Maybe you want to go with Battle Prep, and even Survival Enhancement might be somewhat useful. Falling Flowers next to no damage, Dragon Ascent you can use in very short fights. But yeah, that's about it. Overall, I hope this build update helps. I'm personally not right now dedicatedly playing Invocator, but it is still super solid class and my go-to for like new content where I might be squishy because I'm messing up mechanics. That ability for all those self-heals through Vampiric Contract, combined with the staff masteries to gain all this extra defense and mana regen, makes it an incredibly easy class to play and forgiving in terms of mess ups. So once again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys around.